Hello and welcome to another mini episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today we will be discussing all things Goosebumps related by R.L. Stine. Kristen and I have adopted a Palestinian family that is currently still stuck in Gaza. Mohammed's neighborhood was bombed and killed 22 members of his family, leaving him responsible for his 4 younger siblings who were pulled from the rubble. We have their family's GoFundMe linked in the description, and they are very close to their goal. Please donate below. Also, don't forget that we have a link below to sign up for our free newsletter where you can get more information and updates about us and the podcast. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation and Twitter at LitLibPodcast. I'm your co-host Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms.
Cassie, be quiet. And I'm your co-host, Kristen. You can find me at KRXXDXN on all social media platforms.
So, Chris and I originally were going to read one specific Goosebumps book, but we had a really hard time trying to nail down exactly which one, especially since a lot of these books I haven't read since I was a kid or I read recently. You're trying to find some sort of like political undertheme in them, and we just thought it'd be better to discuss just the overall culture of R.L. Stine because there is a ton about him and just like the time in like the 80s and 90s when this was like a controversial read. So we're just gonna talk in general. We'll include stuff about the show too, probably in here, because there is one little like grouping duology of episodes, or
A chillology.
that is a chillology,
That's what
dare
they're
we say?
called as the
Is that
Goosebumps.
really what it was called?
That's what the Goosebumps
um,
do. Like if they're multiple episodes, they're called the chillologies.
yeah. So we might talk about one specific instance, but for the most part, we're just gonna yap your ear off for about like 20 minutes. So I did a lot of the research, so I will just like get into it. He's very spooky, very appropriately spooky for
I
Halloween.
know.
If you aren't seeing, Kaz is Kristen's cat, very fluffy black cat energy.
Ignore the mess
He's
on the floor.
he's could be feral.
I
I don't
think
know.
he's like the most crazy black. Like he's like too hyper to be like full black cat energy though. He's not
He's certainly
mysterious.
something.
He's definitely evil. He's like crazy evil though. Not like think of like Doofenshmirtz from like Phineas and
Yeah.
Ferb. That's how Cassie is evil.
So he's twisty mustache, as
Yeah.
you like to say.
Anyways, but I haven't read much of R.L. Stine. Even as a kid, what I read the most of as R.L. Stine, not Goosebumps, is mostly Ghostly. Mostly Ghostly fans, rise up. Where are you? Because nobody else ever knows Mostly Ghostly. And they made a
Yeah, like
movie. They made a movie based off that book with
you know what they did? I was trying
Madison
to remember
Pettis.
what that was.
Is that who
Yeah,
it is? The girl, the little
I
girl?
think so.
And then one of the little boys that's like the other ghost, he's like also in uh I don't remember other
Because it
stuff,
was
the Disney stuff.
Disney,
I'm pretty
right?
sure.
See, early childhood memories of Goosebumps. I remember they were always included in. We had these like
Luke
award system.
Binward.
You get these.
That's who it was. He was in Minutemen, if you ever watched that movie.
I did watch Minutemen
Yeah, he
with
was the
Corbin Blue.
yeah. He was the other ghost kid in Mostly Ghostly.
That haircut is so of the
Yeah.
times. That is very Justin
That's his
Bieber.
Wikipedia picture. They did him dirty. Okay, anyways. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off about Goosebumps.
No, I just remember. I think it was first grade or second grade. It must have been first grade. We used to have. We talked about this before. There was like AR testing, but I do remember there was another program that we had where if you read different books of a different category, you could like get like back when they would give out like pins. They would like make like a mystery pin or like a thriller pin, and you'd have to read a certain books for each one, and then you could like get it. And I remember I read Return of the Mummy, and I got my pin from that, and I thought it was so cool. There's just like a lot of really nostalgia, like the covers. You see the covers of those, the colors, the way it was drawn, and it's just very millennial core, and I love it for what it is.
Do you know what's still interesting? So I follow Meet Me in the Media Center. Um, I think we've talked about her on one of our other mini episodes before, but she's like a middle school librarian, and kids are still reading Goosebumps because she'll do book returns where she'll like show all the books that the kids have like basically been reading and they've returned back to the library. And Say Cheese and Die has popped up multiple times. I mean, I'm sure also because of like the spooky season, but also just like in general, the fact that it's still circulating within libraries is pretty interesting.
I'm glad to see that. And I imagine some of the content which we're going to discuss is like the content of the books I worry about not being super applicable because of just how much technology has changed in the last 15 to 20 years. It has changed at a rate that I don't think anyone could have ever anticipated. I remember growing up thinking like the two adult things that I wanted in my life was a pager and I wanted a checkbook with checks that I wanted because you could like pick out designs and stuff. And that's just like
Checkbook's
obsolete.
not even technology.
But it was like a big thing, right? We have tap to pay. Like you
Yeah.
don't even need a debit card. Like
No, you
everything is
just use
just
your
like
phone.
digitalized. Your phone, you can use your watch, you can
This is
use
why money isn't
it's
real
crazy.
anymore.
Money was never real to begin with.
But now
But
it's
that's
not a physical item, so now it's even worse than what it
it's
was.
just interesting like the things that are obsolete, but also I wonder if like Say Cheese and Die is kind of getting more popularity because people are going back to physical media when it comes to like pictures and whatnot. Digital cameras are popping off. People love Polaroids. I know like a lot of millennials I grew up with love Polaroid cameras because it's just like physical media printing off pictures is becoming good, fun, trendy.
I don't
Question
know.
mark? I don't know. It's changed a lot and it's something I'm happy to see. Now, I didn't know that kids were still reading them. And from what I remember, some of the stuff in the novels. I don't like voicemail and stuff, I imagine. I don't think
I
people
mean,
really do like a big voicemail machine or like having
well,
like a
they don't have a
landline.
voicemail machine, but you still get voicemails on your phone, so I would assume kids would still be
Yeah.
aware of voicemails in that way because, like, it's not like phone calls are completely obsolete. Like, obviously, like, texting and, like, social media and talking communicating within that way has really popularized, but I still think a lot of people do prefer, like, voice chat in certain ways, so I do think, like, that's one of the reasons why I think, like, Discord is so popular or even, like, I mean, Zoom had a big thing during COVID, and even Skype was really big until Discord kind of, like, overtook it, but I do think that, like, kids are still like, people still want the like, especially face-to-face talking, and, like, I feel like FaceTime is really popular because I know, like, me and you FaceTime every day too, but, like, I think a lot of people are, like as kids, I know, like, my little brother, he'll FaceTime his friends, like, while he's playing on his computer, like, playing Roblox with them and stuff, so I do think kids are still wanting talking even though there was, like, a big worry that, like, texting was gonna take over everything.
I was gonna say, which it kind of did for a while. Like when texting got really popular, people weren't talking on the phone. You'd rather like text or email, at least towards like the older Gen Z, younger millennial, like that demographic. I don't want to get too off
Yeah.
kilter. I was just thinking about that, like with like the content of a Goosebumps novel. From what I remember, they're silly, they're cheesy, but some of the technology is like what I think I would worry a kid would not be as like immersive. But I think they do a good job kind of staying away from it and kind of keeping it about the experience of being a child
And being scared of something. I think what
and being scared of something. Yeah, that's like the ultimate thing, but they're not gory. There's
mm,
no death or
it's
anything.
more
It's
it's almost
just
like Black Mirror for children.
it kind of is. I can definitely see that comparison in a lot of the stuff that happens, like with the blob that ate everyone. I know that was like one of a very like cult classic book, but it's almost like there's all these layers and twists. There's always twists at the end of every chapter or cliffhangers, so it really like leads kids to want to like continue reading the
Mhm.
book. So they're constructed in a very like approachable way, I would say.
Yeah. Well, because, like, I remember even, like, I think the books obviously came out before the show, but I do think, like, with R.L. Stine, like, I remember being in, like, middle school and my sister being in, like, early elementary school and stuff, and we ended up watching a lot of the show. Really, like, I feel like revitalized a lot of, like, book popularity because you look at like whenever a new movie comes out of like an adaptation of a book or something, then usually that'll have some type of surge in popularity because it already has like a base fandom. But even I remember watching like R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour, which is like another like kid scary show that was like not it was like Goosebumps related, like adjacent where it was like that, but I don't think any of them were ever physical books.
That was like the more elevated, mature one from what I remember is The
I just
Haunting Hour,
remember
wasn't it? Like
they
they
were
were a little older.
longer. I just remember they were like actually like the full like they probably ended up being like 45 minutes versus like Goosebumps only being 20 minutes with commercials. But I do remember like there was one with that girl that everyone hates on TikTok. It's like this little actor girl that she was in Wizards of Waverly Place. I don't know if you watched that show, but there was like I
I
don't
watched the show, but I don't know.
she was like whenever Max turned into a girl, the actress that plays as her.
Oh, no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But, like, everybody on
Yes.
TikTok hates her because, like, I guess she always plays as a really annoying little girl, and she is on, like, an R.L. Stine Haunting Hour episode where, like, there's, like it's kind of like American Girl Doll-esque where, like, um, I don't know, like, she wants this doll or whatever, and she gets it, and then it starts, like, taking over her life or whatever, and then she, like, ends up becoming the doll at the end, and the doll becomes, like, the real girl, and, like, it's kind of interesting because I feel like you can even like, within modern horror, those are still kind of, like, tropes too. Like Longlegs-esque?
I think like R.L. Stine, which is surprised that it even got to that point given the political climate of like the 1990s with the Satanic Panic, which upon further research, I didn't realize there was a huge movement behind trying to get a lot of the books banned because parents were terrified of these books saying that like it wasn't promoting an adult centered lens because like the books are kid centered. They're not like an adult telling you like how to live. It felt very like a kid was talking to you and telling you the story, you know?
Mhm.
So people were really weird about let me see if I can find exactly what it was. Said one man, parent Victor Williams, argued that children are defenseless against the more sinister aspect of the novels and that reading them will get them interested in evil, wicked things. William claimed that the novels spell out formulas for witchcraft and the occultism. And I just think it's quite silly because if you actually read the books or anything about them, there's nothing
No.
to that degree about them. Like it's just like nonsensical things happening that are spooky.
Mhm. I
Like there's
mean
no logical explanation for them often.
well, because, like, one of my favorite episodes of Goosebumps that I had on DVD as a kid was called Perfect School, and so I don't think that one was ever because there's a lot of Goosebumps that were, like, never made into the TV show either. But this one was, like, about this kid that was, like, a really like, I think he was supposed to be, like, middle school, high school age, and he was, like, a really bad kid, like, he didn't listen to his parents or anything like that, and so his parents sent him off to, like, the perfect school or whatever, and then they end up, like, kidnapping your child and then, like, I don't know, like, rewiring their brain or whatever, and then they, like, make a clone, and then I think I don't know if they made a clone and they send the clone back to, like, the parents and it's, like, a perfect, like, studious child, or if, like, they did some type of, like, brainwashing to them to make him, like, a perfect studious child, so then it's, like, you send that kid back to, like I'm pretty sure it
So
was, like,
that
a
would have
clone.
been not the original Goosebumps like storyline.
No, I mean, I don't think it was based off a book. It was, one of the episodes.
Okay, that must be because I was like, I don't remember anything to like that degree because like I remember like how to kill a monster where there's like this swamp monster they go stay with like their uncle or aunt. They're always like staying with like a family member. This monster comes in and then they have to like feed it hot sauce to make it like explode. Like it's just like silly, goofy things.
Yeah.
So like as they progressed, they got like way more
Well,
serious.
because, like, I remember I was even telling you about, like, one of the best episodes that I remember as a kid. I don't remember what the name of the episode is. I'll have to look it up. But I
But
know
like the wheel of something. I have seen it too. I forgot what it was called, but it has the main actress, one of the main actresses from Grey's Anatomy and Private Practice. Because this is like where a lot of actors ended up
Ryan
getting their start
Gosling
too.
was in the Say
Ryan
Cheese
Gosling.
Cheese and Die episode, but I think he got famous off Disney Channel. I don't think he got famous off of
Mhm.
Goosebumps. But I mean, like,
He
kid
did, but he
actors.
did for like acting wise, his like music and like being in theater, I think was
Mhm.
like the Disney All Stars or whatever.
Squeal of Fortune is what the episode.
That's right. The with the pigs.
Yes, which I think if you haven't watched that episode since you were like a kid, I think it's a great episode to rewatch. You don't have to watch because it's a chillology, so there's 3 episodes within it, but the other episodes aren't like super relevant within it. The one that I think is the most important because I watched the first 2 like relatively recently because I wanted to remember. But it's basically like there's like this like sort of like not like it's like a miniature town that's like this girl has in her attic or whatever. And this girl, she grinds all the time. She's a grinder. She wakes up. She's getting money. She said, "Wake me up, run me my money." Because you first get like the first scene where she's like going to this yard sale or whatever, and these kids are selling their old baseball cards or something. And she's like, "Oh, like I'll give you $5 for this card or whatever." And then the kids are like, "Oh, but like you just spent like," and then the kid was like, "Well, I already spent $2 on it, so I want more." She's like, "No, like I'll give you $5 for it," and he's like, "Fine." So then he sells her the card or whatever, and then she's able to like sell it on eBay or whatever for like $50. So then it's very much like that's like one of her examples of like her kind of being like cutthroat capitalist sort of kid. And then like then you cut to her at home and her brother comes like, "Hey, I was wondering if I could borrow some money so I could buy a gift for our parents anniversary." And then she's like, "Yeah, I can loan you some money at 15% interest, blah blah blah. You'll have to pay me back in this amount of time, blah blah blah." And it's like I think it's very like almost humanizing for like the capitalist cuz like I think a lot of the times people view like corporations are not people. Yes, we know that, but you also have to remember there's people like Elon Musk and like the Walton family and stuff that are in charge of why things that happen on a grand scheme within the United States specifically are also why like the poor and like the working class are suffering so much. And so I think this did a really good job of like humanizing it, especially for kids, because then she ends up going into like this town magically, like because she finds the set and she wants to sell it on eBay. So she's like getting really close and she ends up getting sucked into it. And then this guy that like is the owner of the town or whatever is like, "Oh, like I want you to work for me. You can take half the profits of this lemonade stand or whatever." So then she starts selling lemonade and she has a little worker girl and she like eventually starts like making like false scarcity, like supply and demand because like the owner of the town makes it really hot, so everyone's wanting lemonade. It's supposed to be like the best lemonade ever. So then she starts overcharging for the lemonade and then she starts cutting it with water so then it becomes a lower quality product. And I thought it was a very interesting like representation of capitalism in general. Like I think it's really interesting because like I feel like since it's just an episode and not a book, if it was a book, I think we would have read that for the podcast.
And I feel like R.L. Stine, maybe because of all the heat he had been under for all of like the satanic panic stuff, like didn't want to add like that layer of like Red Scare,
Mhm.
potential Red Scare, um, or be faced with it because he's advocating for anything that's even remotely critical of society. So he kind of just continues to fall back on the whole like Twilight Zone-esque
Mhm.
storylines where they're kind of just like weird and eerie and have like some resounding message of like kids overcoming their fears. So he tries to keep it. So I'm very surprised like the shows. I haven't watched any of the newer stuff because I know there's the new one with
Mhm.
Justin Long, which
Yeah, I haven't
I
watched it
do remember
either.
that being way more adult than the other one. There was like alcohol at a party and I think somebody died. So I still need to
Well,
like finish watching that. It was
I haven't watched any of it,
quite
but I
pricey.
do love Justin Long. He's a scream queen in my heart. He's like it's so funny too because like I feel like a lot of the time there's a lot of women that do horror, not to like go off on a random tangent, but like there's a lot of women that constantly do like horror movies, but you never get a lot of men like repeating horror movies, so it's always really fun to see like Justin Long, I think, because he's like Jeepers Creepers, Tusk, Barbarian
Yeah,
most
I
recently.
remember him and Herbie Fully Loaded
Oh
with Lindsay
yeah.
Lohan. That
Yeah.
is one of my first memories of Justin Long.
um but I think it's really interesting too because like I don't remember like a lot of like my mom, she was always kind of like more macabre. I've talked about a lot like about how she was always really into true crime. And I remember she would like she was really into like getting me and my sister into like Goosebumps and like R.L. Stine sort of writing and stuff. So I think it's really interesting that some people that have grown up around like the Satanic Panic and like how different it could like spear off where somebody could be like, "Oh, like I want my kid to read this. I want my kid to be cool." You know? Versus like cuz I know like your parents are more religious too. So I don't know what they thought about you
Yeah.
reading
Um,
Goosebumps.
but, like, early 2000s, I do remember, like, this resurgence of, like, we were going to church, people were getting baptized, it was getting kinda crazy. This is after 9/11 too, so, like,
Mhm.
there was a lot going on. I do remember them being fine with me reading, like, scary things or watching scary things because Saturday mornings I'd come home or I'd wake up and my dad would be watching Tales from the Crypt on Sci-Fi
Mhm.
or like so like those like horror short like anthology shows or Tremors or so horror movies and whatnot had always been a staple in the house and I think that was a line they were not willing to like get rid of. They were like, no, you're fine. I do remember people at my churches being like Harry Potter was a no, SpongeBob was a no.
SpongeBob.
It's just weird. Some people were not allowed to watch SpongeBob. It was
I mean,
crazy, but
I
Harry Potter
know.
especially was a hard line. Nobody watched it, so I watched it like Christmas time, like the first couple of ones, because they always had them during like the Christmas
So were
on
you not
Hallmark.
allowed to read Harry Potter? Or your parents didn't care?
I did, but I had to wait until like I was older to read it because it was an older kid book. My sisters read it and stuff. So like that was like more their age because they're 10 years older than me.
Mhm.
So they were like way more into like Harry Potterdom. Like my sister has like Harry Potter tattoos and stuff. She's very,
Oh.
very into Harry Potter,
I
very
mean,
millennial core. But they also like didn't live with me, so it's a
yeah.
little different.
Well, because
But
I was big
trying to
into
think,
Harry Potter in middle school too. But like that was a lot because like why are you
no, it was
laughing? Like
popular.
it
I
was
remember
like
people because I think it's funny because anytime people talk about it, but it's like it was a really big.
cultural
It still is
phenomenon. Yeah.
huge series. Kids are still reading
TikTok is
it,
still just
and
as popular in like the Harry Potter like scenes where
and now it's
it's
worse
still
with
young
people like
people too. It's not even
so
just
like
millennials.
what is it the sleep token edits of the Death Eaters or whatever at
Oh, I haven't seen
the Harry
those.
Potter world. Oh my gosh, it's so
I don't get a lot of
ridiculous,
Harry Potter
but
stuff on my For You page anymore. I've kind of weeded that out, thankfully. But
I think it's the sleep token stuff that got it going, but I'm trying to think if there's any other discussion points for this that I could bring up, but we didn't read like any specific book and I have read quite a few since in the last like 5 years because I would read them with my kids. So but they don't really have anything. There's no substance. You're kind of just there for the vibes. And I think that's great.
I think that's if that's what you're looking for, I think it's I wonder this is like I think another like critique because R.L. Stein is like the most popular known like child author for like horror and I think this does still go into like our whole critique about how like we've been trying so hard to find like children's horror where it's like this is like the closest to like I guess like middle grade horror that we found, but it's still very young. Like there's not a lot of middle grade horror that I've seen, you know?
Yeah, we have one on the list that we're gonna try to read, which I think we will be able to get through. We actually have quite a few that had gotten recommended. By quite a few, I mean like 3.
Yes.
So that's more than what we had like going for us to begin with. We were just gonna like talk about either separate scary stories or whatnot. But upon more research, is that as of 2022, according to Britannica, over 400 million copies of Goosebumps have been sold worldwide. So R.L. Stine has a monopoly on the like children and like middle grade horror market. So it's very difficult to try to navigate this. And as we have continued, like Banicula and Alvin Schwartz or whatever came out in like the 70s.
Mm.
So like 90s and now it's 2024. It's been 30 years and it's still maintaining this dominance
Mhm.
in this specific genre. So,
Well, because,
kind of
like,
crazy.
that's why I like following Meet Me in the Media Center specifically because I do like seeing what kids are reading, and since it is, like, middle school age, I feel like, um, it's still really interesting that a lot of kids are reading Goosebumps because, like, in her videos, like, there's not a lot of, like, kids horror within it that I see, and I know she said she made, like, a little table of, like, kids horror stuff, and I'd probably be really interested to see what's on there, but it's really interesting to me that, like, Goosebumps is still, like, that high, but then a lot of the times, I just wonder if, like, almost Halloween is, like, falling out of style in certain ways, especially once you get to, like, middle school age, and then it doesn't really revitalize to, like, college age whenever you go to, like, college parties and things. Because like, think about what, like, after you get out of elementary school, you're like, "Oh, I'm too old to trick or treat, but I'm too young to go to haunted houses," and, like, things like that. So I wonder if that age range is just, like, not super interested in Halloween unless they are, like, more macabre sorta, like, kid, you know?
I do remember like stopped going I stopped going trick or treating when I was like 12 or 13. And but then I started going to haunted houses on Halloween with like my friends. Like there was always like a parent
Mhm.
that would take all of the kids to like the haunted houses and whatnot. So that's what we ended up doing. I would just like ask my mom to buy me some candy, or I would just steal candy because they passed out candy every year. My mom
Mhm.
like worked at the school district, so all of the kids would want to come to our house to go and see my mom and be like, she dressed up like a witch. She does it every year, and they
Mhm.
love it. They think it's great. But I didn't want any part of that. I was like, I want to go hang out with my friends, or we would just watch like horror movies all night.
Yeah. Which I feel like it's not like, no offense to that, but that's not as fun as, like, getting dressed up in a costume and going out and experiencing. Because I feel like even with, haunted houses, how many times are you going Halloween night? It's usually, like, within the Halloween season. They open up at the end of September and they go all through October. Usually, you're only going, like, a Friday and Saturday before Halloween, not necessarily on Halloween, I feel like, because a lot of the times, I mean, Halloween is a work night, school night, so unless you have pretty cool.
Have you ever gone on a Halloween night?
I've never gone on a Halloween night, I've always usually done, like, weekends around Halloween.
Dude, it's like the biggest day because it's like once everything is done, like the lines are wrapping around the block. It's
Yeah, that's
crazy. I
probably
think it's
why
like
I
the
wouldn't do
busiest
it to
night.
it. Which, I mean, like, it makes
It's so
sense
fun though
because
because
it's like,
everyone's dressed up.
yeah, but, well, because I know me and Tyler, we were wanting to do a haunted house this year, but I think a lot of the haunted houses here, they're only open on Fridays and Saturdays too, and then probably Halloween night too, but Halloween is also, like, whenever it's during a work week, it's really hard to get that time off because you're like, well, you have to wait till it gets dark out, so it's already waiting till 7, 8, 9 o'clock before you can leave the house to go there, and then you're waiting in line for 2 or 3 hours. So it might be November 1st by the time you're actually experiencing your haunt.
What's up next? Next week will be a
Dowry of
main
blood.
episode will be a dowry of blood, so that will be a good one. Hopefully, we haven't recorded it quite yet, but we do have the book done.
Yes.
Um,
And
if
then
you like this, keep it. We have one more mini spooky episode coming, and
right
then I think we're
before
gonna take a break,
Halloween,
and then we'll go into like
Christmas.
Christmassy mini episodes, maybe.
I don't know what we're gonna do with Christmas. We haven't really discussed
We will
this.
do like two. We might just do like two, and maybe talk
What
about like
books?
something. I don't know. We'll talk about books or
Christmas vibe in general, overconsumption,
maybe we will come up with a
capitalism.
pseudo an argument where one of us will take the position of whether or not Santa Claus
Is
is
real?
exploiting the
Oh,
elves, or if the elves, if they're living in like a vanguard society. I don't know. Maybe we'll come up with something stupid. I don't
okay.
know.
This is
I
all
might.
Mariah's ideas. Mariah's about to be talking to herself for half an hour about this.
Thanks for watching
Uh,
or listening.
yeah. If you have any suggestions for more books too, you can leave them below, especially children's horror, or if you have any children's, I guess, Christmassy books. I'm sure there's like a Banicula holiday special too, because there's a couple of books within that series, which we did not
Yeah.
read. So I bet I wouldn't be surprised that there's not one that's around Christmas time. But other than that, thanks for watching. Thank you and good night.